Welcome. Tonight's program will dive deep into fringe knowledge of lost, hidden, and suppressed truths about the nature of our reality. The decoding process can be uncomfortable and at times frightening. However, you are not alone on this journey of understanding. Welcome to the Shadow Bank Podcast.
What's up, bro?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Thanks for everybody who's already in the lives. I see some of you guys already here. We're live on Twitch, YouTube, X, probably somewhere else, NSA databases, so on and
Hmm.
so forth. I got somebody who's been on before. We're calling them Old Scary World Mud Flood memes on Instagram. Is there anything else that you do other than Instagram, like content wise, that you want to plug before we like go deep on this shit, like right off the bat?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of, different things going on social media, but, pertinent to what we're talking about tonight, it's just Old Scary World. But if anybody wants to check out my music, it's Pale Castle, which also has an Instagram. That's PALE and then Castle, CASTLE, on Bandcamp and Instagram, if you want to listen to my music. But that's it. That's all that's really worth mentioning tonight. But
Hell yeah, dude. What
yeah,
kind of music
yeah,
do you do?
it's dungeon synth. So it's like medieval.
Dungeon.
Yeah, it's like medieval electronic music, like Baroque,
Oh,
or but like with synths. So it's minimal. It's not like dance music. It's
sure,
more.
bro. We
It's
might
like
have to
yeah.
collab, dude, because I'm big into like synth wave and like vaporwave
Oh,
style
okay.
stuff, like lo-fi
Yeah,
shit. And
I used to do vaporwave. I have some stuff floating out there under different names.
oh, nice,
Um,
man.
yeah, we'll have to
Love
talk about that. Yeah,
Yeah, that's another conversation. That's cool. Right on,
yeah,
man. Well,
yeah.
we are here because obviously everybody knows the world is burning, literally, but
Hmm.
there are actual fires burning. And I haven't talked about this on the show at all yet. And to be completely honest with you, I haven't really done a whole lot of like, let's call it research on this, right?
Hmm.
Personally, I see the posts on X, I see the videos, looks sketch, looks like the end of the world's happening over there. But at the same time, like, to me, it seems like this happens every couple of years over there. So,
Hmm.
I'm in Florida, right? So for me, it's just like I see it on a screen. I'm like, oh, here, another California's on fire again, right? It's like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but you,
I mean,
you, yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. Yeah, no, I'm in California. I'm not anywhere near Los Angeles per se. I'm about 400 miles from the fires. I'm in, Silicon Valley. But I've visited Southern California several times, and my wife was born in Orange County, and so she kind of gives me some of the, fills in some of the blanks as far as the geography and some of the logistics with the Santa Ana winds. And I mean, there's multiple things we can go over tonight, but like that's one of the factors is the winds. That is what's making these fires a lot worse. I mean, there was reports of 100 mile per hour gusts, a few days ago, and the Santa Ana winds that come down from the Santa Ana mountains and the San Bernardino mountains, they're what's classified in meteorology as witching winds. And witching winds occur all over the planet. In German, they're called the Fochen, and they come down the Alps and stuff like that. And there's a phenomenon widely, you know, documented where positive ions increase, and so it affects people's moods and stuff like that. These winds, they literally change people's behavior. So emergency room visits go up, police activity, domestic violence, all kinds of things are associated with these winds. So in addition to the fires, we have these winds, and they're called the Santa Anas. down there. And like I said, in Germany, they're called the Feuchen, which is the witching winds. And it's been documented for centuries. Actually, the phenomena is that the low pressure system that the winds create affect people's moods. But anyways, so yeah, there's just a lot going on. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of, there's a lot of doom pilling. There's a lot of black pilling. There's a lot of there's just a lot of ignorance, to be honest. And it's something like when I started following this, when these fires broke out, I was paying attention to it, and I've just seen it get worse and worse. And kind of one of the general consensuses is that, oh, they deserve it. They're rich people. It's not true. I'm here to set the record straight. Lots of middle class people, lots of regular people have been affected by this, probably more so, not necessarily in property damage on a monetary level, because yeah, the houses in Pacific Palisades and Malibu were worth more than the ones in the other communities. But you have to remember, there's about 6 or 7 fires. I last time I checked, there was 7 fires, and they're not all close to each other. They're scattered around the greater Los Angeles area. And the biggest fire, the Easton fire, that affected Altadena, and Altadena is not all movie stars and celebrities or anything like that. It's regular people. If you watch the footage, I mean, normal people's houses are burning, old people, retirees, working class, artists, not necessarily famous people by any means. So when I see people commenting like, oh, I hope the whole city burns down, I understand some of it's tongue in cheek, but then there's also like generally people who don't understand. And then I see shit like, oh, this is Luigi's revenge, in regard to the guy, the Italian assassin, or whatever you want to call him. And so they're kind of lumping it all into this like kind of like eat the rich, kill the rich, this like kind of almost like commie kind of talk, and it's like, hey, there's people that bought their house down in Los Angeles in 1960 something, and they just happen to be scraping by. It doesn't mean that they're all like, 1%ers or something like that. So that's just something I wanted to get off my chest, was like, just to set the record straight, is like, no, it's not all rich people. Yeah, a lot of celebrities' houses burn down, and it doesn't matter because they have so much money they can just rebuild, or they have multiple homes already. Of course that's true. But the reality is, no, it's affecting small businesses, family, just regular people. And people are trying to save their houses, and there's no water coming out of the hydrants because, they shut off a big supply, I guess a few months ago. And that's like part of this whole, controversy, is that, they took a big supply of water offline. So there's low water pressure. A lot of the fire hydrants aren't working. There's just been a lot of incompetence. And so kind of the argument, or kind of the whatever, is that, was this done on purpose, or is this just gross incompetence, or a mixture of the two, or a secret third thing? And
I think that's, to be honest with you, man, I think what you're saying is obviously true, right? And I think a big problem is with the internet and just the way that things have been going, especially since COVID, right? That people who are, I'm not even going to say like thinking for themselves so much, but they're just starting to question narratives, right? They're quick to jump on something like this. What the fuck is this ad from CNN? Let me stop sharing. I was just trying to show a map of where the fires are, but everything just kind of gets jumbled together at this point, it seems like, when it comes to whether you're talking conspiracies or just like alternative narratives to like the mainstream narratives of things. It seems like everything is a psyop, right? Everything is, agent provocateurs. Everything is, like you said, arson, right? Somebody did this shit on purpose for some nefarious reason, and it could be some of those things. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of guilty of that too. I mean, that's what this show is. It's what it's always been. It's kind of a comedic take on conspiracies while believing them to some extent, right? So like I like to poke fun at myself and say everything's a psyop. But I am curious to know, like, what do you think is the cause of these fires? Like, actually, despite all the shit that we're seeing online.
Well, you have to put yourself in the mind of of a perpetrator or a conspirator in these situations. So you kind of sometimes you pretend, kind of LARP, kind of role play as, say, if you were an FBI interrogator, and you try to run a psychological angle on somebody or a certain situation. So the way I look at it is, if you were a pyromaniac or if you were a serial arsonist, you would pay attention to the wind patterns and you would pay attention to the wind prediction models, excuse me, and you would look and see, when is it going to be really windy? And then that's a good time to start a fire, because the winds are what really carry the fire. You start a fire on a day when there's no breeze, it's just completely still, just completely dead air. Yeah, it might turn into a wildfire, it might not, but the chances are exponential when it's windy. And so there was already a red flag warning for most of Southern California. And they put that out probably about 48 hours before the fire started. And there was people predicting, like, there's going to be a fire, whether it's because somebody flicks a cigarette butt out of their car or because somebody purposely starts fires. Now, to cut to the chase, I think that some of the fires were purposely set, especially the ones that came after, or possibly like the first one. But some of them might, see, that's the thing about fire, embers spread. So some of the fires, now that there's like 6 or 7 of them, big ones, not counting small ones, yes, it's a strong possibility that some of them were natural in the sense that they were born from a previous one. But yes, I do think that this is arson. There was been reports and video of people starting fires, whether they're copycats or they're just trying to cause a little bit more mayhem and chaos into the mix. But yeah, I think that they were man-made. The majority of the destruction is at the hands of someone. But it's also the wind, and the wind is what was permitting, or prohibiting, I should say, hindering using water and stuff like that, because it would just blow away. It was so damn windy. A lot of helicopters couldn't get into those areas because the gust could take down the helicopter. That could cause another fire. So I think it's a combination of arson, incompetence, malevolent behavior by certain groups. They're hindering. See, you have to look at it like, sometimes you wait for an opportunity, and instead of helping, you hinder, and that's just as bad as orchestrating the whole thing. So sometimes it's not as easy as, okay, well, they're using laser beams or something like that, which I'm open to. I'm open to, to the direct energy weapon theory if there's proof. Sure, if you show me proof, like just irrefutable proof, not an AI generated video or photograph, but proof, then sure, we know we have that technology. We could use that if we want to. But sometimes it's just easier for these people to just wait for an opportunity and just make it worse and then blame it on incompetence. So I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, they would rather be seen as incompetent because they can kind of bounce back from that. That's something that they can absorb. But they don't necessarily want people thinking that it was on purpose, that they're being incompetent on purpose, like they're playing, an act.
So let me ask you this, like, when because I also think that this is done on purpose, right? Because again, I'm a conspiracy nut, and I
Mhm.
think that everything is done on purpose to some extent. Do you think this is something where it's like they send a couple of, let's call them agents, to just random spots in the woods and like they just actually start fires? Do you think
Mhm.
this is some kind of like technology? Because I mean, we could talk about like direct energy weapons in the sense of like they're firing them from satellites or from, high altitude planes, right? And like none of that stuff is impossible. Like you said, the technology is there, right? But it doesn't have to be all that. I mean, you could literally just fly a simple drone over there and just drop. You don't have to drop, I was gonna say thermite because I've seen those videos from like Ukraine, but they have, I'm sure you've probably seen them. You could just take like a battery and like a laser, like in your garage, you can make something that can light cardboard on fire and dry
Mhm.
leaves on fire. You know what I mean? Just I've seen
Mhm.
these YouTube videos, these little nerds in their garage, and they're like shooting their little laser gun at stuff, lighting it on fire instantly. It's on fire.
Mhm.
On fire. So you put that on a drone, especially if you're, government contract, you have technology and money. I'm sure they have that kind of direct energy weapons too. So how do you think they did this?
Well, that's the thing is it's a known unknown. We know it's happening, but we don't know how it happened. So we can speculate, we can throw out theories, but at the end of the day, we're not absolutely sure. We don't know definitively, what started them. I think that in regards to the Pacific Palisades fire, which was the first one, that's the one that got the most attention. It's kind of getting the most attention in general because that's the one that affected celebrities the most, as far as, household names, their homes being destroyed. Officially, they think that it started in somebody's backyard. Now, that's kind of vague because it's saying, okay, well, was it an accident? Like somebody was barbecuing or somebody was having a fire, like in a fire pit, and it got out of control, and ember flew off and went. Because when you look at the map of Pacific Palisades, it butts up against an open space preserve. So there's all kinds of, overgrowth, all kinds of, dead grass and all that kind of stuff. The thing is we're not going through like a tremendous drought right now in California like we were a few years ago. We're like kind of whatever right now. And it had rained recently. So it wasn't like it was like super, super dry. And so once again, we go back to the winds. So in a way, I could say, yeah, it was arson and they just let the winds do the rest. But it's not like they really had to do a lot as far as planning. They could literally just start a small fire and the winds would pick it up. But as
Yeah.
far as who did it now, I read something years and years ago, and it comes up, once in a while in different, forms. But it's basically this theory that okay, so they cut $17 million roughly from the LA Fire Department's budget last year. This new mayor, Karen Bass or something, she's faced some other controversies. So the theory, some people's theory is that firefighters started it because they want more funding. It's like job security. Yeah, I know it's fucked up to think that, but there has been cases where they've caught firefighters starting fires, and then they come in and they're like the hero and stuff like that, and then they get a big, they get a big
Yeah, I mean, look,
budget.
I'm not one to like be ashamed of tossing those types of theories around. I know a lot of people are scared to even talk about that kind of thing, right? Because it's like, oh, you're
Hmm.
disrespecting the heroes or whatever
Oh
it
yeah.
is, right? Or like you can go deeper and it's like, oh, you don't think anybody died at such and such an event, and it's like,
Hmm.
I'm not afraid of those types of theories, so I'm with it, right? Like it could totally be
Hmm.
something like that. It could be that simple of a thing. Like, hey, man, we just need more funding. We just need some press or whatever the case might be. We need
Yeah.
something here.
I'm not saying that, like, for the record, I'm not saying that that's what's going on. I'm saying that other people think that that's what's going on, and it makes sense. And if you disregard, human life and
Right.
morality and ethics and all that kind of stuff, and you just say, okay, well, maybe they needed a really big fire to get people to understand how important they are. Now, that doesn't go for all firefighters, obviously, but you kind of follow the money kind of thing. The other theory, is has to do with smart cities and all that kind of stuff. And there is a smart LA 2028 initiative where they want Los
Yeah,
Angeles
let's
to be a
get into
smart.
that, bro, because I talk about
Sure.
this a lot on my show. I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep cutting you off.
No, it's okay. No, I
This,
want to segue into that as well.
yeah, this type of shit is like my bread and butter, though. Like Great Reset,
Hmm.
smart city initiative stuff. So you told me a little bit of like your thoughts before we started going live on this, but
Hmm.
break
So
that
you
down.
could, yeah, so you can go onto the Los Angeles County website and you can look up the stuff they have. They have information about it. They have essentially, online pamphlets kind of laying out the groundwork for this to try to get people to warm up to it or to normalize it. And it's just like any other smart city concept model is basically, you don't want a car, you don't want to do this, you want to live in a tower, all that kind of stuff. And I can understand where people are coming from in that sense, but the problem is at least in regard to Malibu and Pacific Palisades, it's so far away from downtown Los Angeles. Like if you can pull up a map and you can look at downtown LA, like what we would consider the downtown part of Los Angeles proper, the city of Los Angeles, and then where the Pacific Palisades are, where Malibu is, even where Altadena is, which is where the bigger fire is, it's by Pasadena. It's really far away from downtown Los Angeles. And we've been told that these smart cities will be, walkable, 15-minute cities, stuff like that. It wouldn't really be advantageous to burn down what's on fire, it would be actually more advantageous for them to destroy downtown Los Angeles. But that would kind of screw up their plans because there's already infrastructure that would support a smart city. So yeah, so where it's all red, there's fires. There's probably more fires than that, but those are the two big ones. And then Los Angeles, where it says Los Angeles, that's actually where the smart city will be, or where they're proposing for it to be. So when you look at where the fires are, that's actually a great distance. That's like, because it's very dense there, so it would take a
Right.
long time. And then the
Well,
other
no.
thing,
Okay, go ahead.
no, it's
Sorry,
a,
let me cut
no. If you had a point, go ahead.
Well, my only thought about the smart city thing is I understand your point. However, I would argue that my understanding of the smart city initiatives is that they want to pull people out of the more rural areas, right? The more let's call it the valuable land, right? They're trying to
Hmm.
get people out of this valuable land and into the smart cities. So when I'm looking at this map, what I'm seeing is they're burning the areas, the let's call them suburban areas, or more rural areas than downtown LA, to try to
Hmm.
get those people to be forced into the greater LA area over time, right?
Oh yeah,
Not the
no,
other way around.
oh no, I can see that angle too, and that will technically be an effect of this in some regards. Some people might want to
Mhm.
live down, they might move to the more, but the thing is that these areas here, the ones here by the coast, that would be Malibu and Pacific Palisades and Hollywood Hills, Laurel Canyon, Benedict Canyon, all that kind of stuff. And we know about Laurel Canyon, but that's a whole other subject. And then this other one here in the north, the one that's more east, that's Pasadena and Altadena. Those are really built up areas already. They're suburban, but they're kind of like they're not like true suburban. They're California suburban, Southern California suburban. So it's not really rural. Rural doesn't really start until you get east of the San Bernardino Mountains and Los Angeles State Park. But places like Lancaster and San Bernardino County and stuff like that, that's more rural. But I thought about that too, and my retort or my rebuttal to that would be is that they burnt down these people who are supposedly part of this inner circle, like John Legend and his wife, and the usual suspects kind of people that have been connected with Pizzagate or kind of towing the line for the COVID thing, and all that kind of stuff. Those people aren't ready to give up their palatial estates. They're not ready to become like a commoner. Like they're not going to live in a smart city. They're not going to live in a tower. So for them to be targeted in a conspiratorial way, like in a very methodically planned out way, doesn't really add up because we're talking about Smart City 2028. Now they'll try to push that on normies. They'll try to push that out, to the common person. But I don't think that celebrities are ready to leave their homes. And as far as like them being protected, like we saw in what was it, the fires in Hawaii, it was like, oh well, Oprah Winfrey's house didn't burn down because she had a blue roof or something like that. We didn't see any blue roof action here. Celebrities weren't warned. I mean, they lost their stuff, and they could say, oh, that's just all part of the act, and they had to give it up to, get me to say something like that. But the bottom line is the culture of Los Angeles isn't ready to give up the culture. The people involved in all that, because we're talking about 3 years. We're talking about Smart City LA 2028. Now, I don't know if that means like the unveiling of it and it's going to go on for another, decade or two, but there's no way that they're going to get, and it was supposed to coincide with the Olympics being in Los Angeles in 2028, which is only 3 years away. And they plan for these things, well in advance. So the other theory is that it has something to do with that they need to clear that all out to build the Olympic Village or something like that. Well, I looked into that. The connection between Pacific Palisades, which is the area that burned, and the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles is that they wanted to use a golf course that was in Pacific Palisades. There was a certain country club, can't think of the name right now, but there's a certain country club in Pacific Palisades that they were going to use for the golf, aspect. That's it, just the golf. And I don't know if they're going to be able to rebuild that. They could probably rebuild that in 3 years. It's if it's just a golf course, they could do that, and that's it. They didn't have plans to build the Olympic Village there or anything. It wouldn't even be a good spot anyways, because like I said, it's full of these multi-million-dollar homes. It doesn't really jive. They would probably want to put that more like in downtown Los Angeles. That would make more sense. They probably already have a place for that. I haven't looked up the plans, but I'm sure that this fire wasn't really part of the plans as far as that goes, because it's actually going to probably cost them more money to figure out what they're going to do with the golf course. So there's that. Now, as far as pushing people out, yeah, but I would be more suspicious if there was a huge fire east of Los Angeles, like I said, in those more truly rural areas where there is like still farms and people, living
Yeah.
on a lot of land.
Yeah, I mean, you make good points. I mean, honestly, I, I could see it maybe being used as like never let a good crisis go to waste. Like, hey, there's
Hmm.
fires there. Let's use this as part of our agenda. Like it might benefit the overall agenda, but probably not part of the plan to begin with, I guess. And it's interesting too because I have seen a lot of these videos of like crackheads starting fires and like homeless people starting fires, and like I saw a video of some kids apparently throwing like jugs of gasoline out, of the car. And it's just like, how much of that is, like you said, copycats or just people trying to make content or like
Hmm.
prank videos and that kind of shit. And then was this fired? I mean, I guess you're right. Like, who cares about how it started exactly? You could speculate forever about that shit.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it kind of matters, right? Like, if it was just some crackheads starting the fires, oops, right?
Hmm.
Now we could just start pointing fingers at like bureaucracy. Like, why wasn't the land management shit taken care of, right? Why weren't the logistics of the water and shit taken care of and all that kind of stuff? But if it was some nefarious actors, then we can start asking other questions like, is this like some another layer of, you know, terrorism? Like, because we
Hmm.
apparently there's all these terrorists that are here, right, that have come across in the last 4 years and so on and so forth. So that's why I like to
Well,
speculate on the how.
well, yeah, no, I mean, I could go off in a lot of different directions based off of, what you just said. And you mentioned terrorism, so I mean, we can get into that later. But one of the things I wanted to talk about too, in regards to what you said about it doesn't matter how they started and all that kind of stuff, is yeah, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it does to a certain extent. We'll probably never, know for sure exactly, but we do know that it's being used. It's a major media thing. Like the media is just like it's everybody's talking about it. It's an international story. It's a big deal because of where it happened. And here's the thing. Yeah, we get fires in California all the time. It's not uncommon for there to be fires in Malibu. It's not uncommon for there to be fires up in the hills. But here's the thing, a lot of the stuff that burned down within the last few days is over 100 years old, meaning that it survived all those other fires. The fire usually didn't leave that area. So people say, oh, well, they shouldn't have been, built that close. Well, they were building stuff close. I mean, ever since Los Angeles, started to be, developed. So some of these churches, some of these houses and stuff have been around for over 100 years. And so my argument is like, yeah, we've had fires. It's normal, but they've never spread this far, even though it's already been built out. It's not new construction that got burnt down. A lot of these homes have been there for a very long time. Some of the churches and things like that. So then that kind of ties in to the old world resets happening, every 100 years or so. And we
That
can get into, yeah, we can
I
get
was
into that
just
whole thing too.
Yeah, what you were just saying, it reminds me of something that I saw. I call it a meme, I guess. It was like a picture, and it said something like, "This fire is X, like 10 times bigger than the Great Chicago Fire or whatever," right? And it had like
Hmm.
a little, like a little image to show the difference or whatever. And what I thought was interesting is that comparison was even in the zeitgeist, right? Like even the
Hmm.
fact that that comparison was floating around on the internet was interesting to me because, like you said, these world resets that happen and like those fires that were happening back then and all that, and it's like, why are they like being used in memes now, right? You talk about memetics and meme magic, and then they're like bringing up the history. So what you said is interesting.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I wanted to touch on, since you mentioned it, was like how there's a lot of distrust in the government. There's a lot of distrust in like more progressive policies and all that kind of stuff. And we've kind of seen that unfold over the last few years, especially with COVID. And so I would kind of call it the COVID effect, in the sense that a lot of people were like normies and they woke up during the COVID thing, and now they're very skeptical, very paranoid, very, open-minded to alternative theories and all that kind of stuff. And they've kind of like red pilled themselves, or maybe they warmed up to their friends who were trying to warn them previously. But it actually goes back further than that. It goes back to, say, 2014, 2015, when we started to see the tide turning a little bit more towards, populism with Donald Trump and all that kind of stuff. And we started hearing, certain words enter the nomenclature, like woke and, diversity hires. And now it's DEI is like a big buzzword with boomers and everybody else. DEI, DEI, DEI. And well, that's attached to the fires, because the mayor has, Karen Bass, she's supported DEI hiring within Los Angeles County. The fire chief of Los Angeles is a lesbian, and she created this whole kind of like branch of equity hiring. These people get hundreds of thousands of dollars a year salary, and their job is just to manage the diversity hiring itself. And so we see fire, devastation, lives lost, property damage, people's lives ruined because they don't have insurance. But that's a separate subject that we'll get to in a second. And then diversity, woke, left versus right paradigm, Hegelian dialect, this, that, whatever, us against them. So people are like primed. People have been primed for like 10 years to associate incompetence and stupidity and just like preventable things, like, oh, this wouldn't have happened if Los Angeles was a red county. Yeah, probably not. Probably not. They probably would have had a better response to the fire. Would it have happened due to, arson, pyromania, whatever? Yeah, maybe. But what we're seeing now, and then want to get to, just for a second, the fact that these companies are ditching the diversity, equity, inclusion platform, like even Meta now. So, and then you got Zuckerberg, you got Sugar Mountain going on Joe Rogan and saying, oh, there needs to be more masculinity. Hey, I agree, but where were you a few years? Like, so we're seeing the tide turning, but what people don't understand is it's a way to usher in more draconian laws, more surveillance, more like Patriot Act kind of shit. And people go, oh, well, but Zuckerberg's woke now, like, or he's not woke anymore, and now he's based, or like they're trying to warm up to people who left because they saw the reality, they saw the true nature of this thing. So this damn fire is like it's a catalyst for this shit. They're gonna get people to turn their backs on wokeism and go towards MAGA and go towards pro-Zionist, kind of like basically the new world order is going to be anti-woke, because they've got people burnt out. They got fatigued. They got fatigued on the vaccines, on all that shit. And now they're like, okay, here's how you redeem yourself. And the fire is perfect because you can actually, there's some real devastation. We're not talking about feelings anymore. We're talking about people losing their homes, losing their businesses, their lives being completely shattered. Okay, now not you, but the general public, blame DEI, blame wokeism, which is fine, but why didn't we just prevent that shit from getting to the point where it could cause this level of incompetence? So it's just that fucking thing again.
I agree with that, but I want to speak a little bit to the Mark Zuckerberg thing and like the corporations and that moving away from the wokeism a little bit, because I heard something interesting the other day. It was, I forget his name and I forget the organization he works for, but his job is basically to as a shareholder in these big companies, right? He owns X amount of shares in all these companies, so he has the right to kind of pitch like these shareholder meetings, I guess, with these people. And his whole thing is to basically push them to actually abide by like their fiduciary duties, right? To actually get their shareholders to gain profits, okay? And they're not doing that. And this whole thing goes back to like just the dollar being debased. It was like a Bitcoin video essentially, but the point is that he was saying that his job is going in there and pulling them away from wokeism, because wokeism is actually losing these corporations money and therefore losing the shareholders money. So I
Mhm.
think at least half of all of these corporations going anti-woke is because of guys like him that are like literally putting these companies on blast, like saying, hey, listen, you're not abiding by your fiduciary duties here by going woke, so you have to pull back on that shit. So I don't necessarily, I think it's both. It's what you're talking about,
Mhm.
and it's also the money, right? Like it's money talks for these people. That's why they're billionaires.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're familiar with the expression that great minds think alike.
Hmm.
You've heard that adage. Okay, well, that's exactly where we're at right now between you and I, is that I thought about that too. I envisioned them having a shareholders meeting and somebody, and saying, okay, like we have to abide, and that's true. When you're a publicly traded company, you have these board meetings, and people who own a certain amount of stock are privy to these meetings, being present, being, um, aware of everything that's going on that level. And yeah, they probably did. They've said, how can we get those people back into the fold? The people who left Instagram, the people who left Facebook, the people who don't trust us anymore. I mean, here's the bottom line. He's saying, okay, you can argue with people about LGBTQ shit. You can argue with people about flat earth. You can argue with people about all the stuff that got people kicked off of Instagram. And that's great, because now I feel like I can express myself a little bit more with the memes, or I can talk a little bit more, openly on the live streams on Instagram and Facebook and so forth. Great. But he still said, you are not to speak ill about Israel or Zionism or Jews or any of that stuff. So you still see that there's still that wall there. And there's been a huge uptick in anti-Semitism, which is fine. That's just as that. But it's funny how they'd still draw a line in the sand somewhere. They say, okay, well, we got to stop here though. We're still going to enforce this. You can talk about COVID vaccine. Like, do you realize that he literally came on and said, "Hey, they forced me to censor information about vaccines. They forced me. They coerced me. They threatened me." He went on, on Joe Rogan and said that.
Yeah, that's a psyop, man. I think like you were saying, the whole thing was a psyop, dude. I think
Yeah.
going back, we were saying this during COVID, right? We were saying that
Hmm.
COVID is a psyop, but I don't think any of us really truly realized, because we can't see the future. But looking back on it now and seeing what they're doing now, it's clear to me that the psyop was, as you're saying, right? Make the enemy the woke mind virus, right? And it's
Hmm.
like it is an enemy, like on its face, right? It, like the woke mind virus is an enemy to humanity if you think about it. But at the same time, it's like they put that on blast in front of all of us for a few years, to the point to where it was this, that was the invisible enemy, right? Like it went from, we always talk about this in conspiracy world, right? It went from communism to terrorism to the virus, right? But then to wokeism, which is an ideology, it's another invisible enemy, right? And now we're getting into like the shift, right? I think the great reset is about to happen, right? This agenda 2030, the smart city, LA 2028, all these types of
Hmm.
things, like that's only a couple years, man. I think the shit is about to shift. So this whole red wave that we saw, and everybody's all hyped on Trump, and they're like, "Oh, he's gonna make all this stuff great." Listen, I'm sure a lot of stuff's gonna be great, but like, they are passing some new Patriot Act style shit soon, real soon, and it's all gonna be
Hmm.
tied to like the decentralization and the AI and the crypto stuff. It's all gonna be tied into this new Patriot Act shit that I think they're pushing.
Yeah. Here's the thing: is they'll fuck you going both ways. That's the thing. They'll use the being based, being schizo, being whatever, right wing, um, whatever, there's some kind of subcategories now, but basically being, anti-mask, anti-vaccine, anti-Fauci, this blah 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 blah. But what they don't want you to do, and this is like the rarest of the rare, is just to be like, I see through all of it. Like, I mean, Trump is the self-professed, father of the vaccine, Operation Warp Speed, but there's some like kind of cognitive dissonance with some of these and they go, well, that doesn't count. He didn't know. Oh, okay, fine, whatever cope you want to use, I don't care. But here's the thing. Yeah, I don't want to get too spicy because, we are on YouTube technically, and I don't want to, whatever. But
Twitch is
I think people
worse.
could, yeah, Twitch is worse. I think people can read, I think people can listen between the lines or read between the lines and say, like, look, it's all bullshit. The lab story is bullshit. Okay, they want you to believe the lab story because otherwise they wouldn't be letting people talk about it. Here's the reality, in my opinion. And so it is a reality in my world. It's not just an opinion, it's my reality. So it's a fact to me, is that they want you scared. So they either want you scared that your life is going to be over, or I should say, I should speak in past tense now because we got through the fire. But back in 2021, they wanted you scared that if you didn't get the vaccine, that your life was going to be over. You weren't going to be able to travel. You weren't going to be able to work. You weren't going to be able to fucking walk down the street without getting, held up by, the Fauci police or whatever. They were going to come to your door and stick you in the arm. They wanted you scared that if you took the vaccine, that you were going to get sick. They wanted you to be. So the bottom line is the fear narrative. As long as you're scared of what they have either control over or which you don't have control over, then they win, bottom line. So the only way truly out of this thing, in a sense, is to do things that they don't have control over. And, when people get really black-pilled and stuff like that, I go to them and I say, look, I say, what are they doing right as of this very second, as this very moment? What are they doing to prevent you from having a good time? Like, are they stopping you from having a hobby? Are they stopping you from owning a business? All this stuff, like, are you doing it to yourself? Now, of course they're doing it. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that they're not fucking people over left and right constantly. But what I'm saying is sometimes people need to get a grip and enjoy this moment in time where we're not in a complete dystopia, where it's just completely transparent. Like, there's still opportunities to have a very rich and rewarding life. And people need to seize on that. They need to really grab life by the balls sometimes and not get black pilled. That's my biggest complaint, is like when people are just completely like doom pilled. It's like you have to rise above that shit. Otherwise they've already won and you've already lost. So when it comes to all this shit, it's just sometimes when I start talking like this, this shit starts clicking. And I think this fire is like the crescendo of wokeism, because so many people are blaming DEI and diversity, higher, all that shit that's connected to that shit. And then you got Elon Musk kind of in the mix, like saying that he's kind of like, he's on the side of let's blame Gavin Newsom, which is fine. I don't like that dude. I never liked that dude. I didn't like the dude when he was the mayor of San Francisco. Is this going to keep him from running for president? Is this going to keep him from running for governor of California? I don't know if he even plans to run. But the point is that yeah, they need a scapegoat, and it's
So
fine.
it's almost like they're burning the Democrat Party, right?
Yeah.
And it's like they were the useful idiots to bring
Hmm.
about this new world order, this one world government, right? This unity government that they've been talking about for like the last 4 years, right? Those words, I feel like, have meaning, and I see what you're saying. If I'm correct here, right? Like they're gonna burn down the Democrat Party, all the MAGA and the right and the red wave people and all that. They're gonna like flock to the right, right? But what we're doing here is we're actually gonna start doing like this globalization, I guess is the best word to call it, right? Because Trump's gonna start doing this thing where he's gonna start negotiating, and I guess the best way to put it, in my opinion, is going to be like, a, I don't want to say like eroding borders, because like his whole shtick is like the border, but it's not going to be so blatant. It's going to be like some kind of slow walk kind of thing, right? It's like, hey, and this is why I was saying before, it's going to have something to do with the decentralization of the crypto shit, because all of the world banks are going to start using this thing, right? This digital mechanism that's going to track all transactions and all this thing. Like, this is the ultimate tracking device, even though it's all decentralized, right?
Well, yeah, no, I mean the thing, it goes a lot deeper than that. It's like you look up technocracy, technocratic
Mhm.
society. These people have existed for almost 100 years. And you can look this up. They have maps. It was their idea to take over Canada. It was their idea to take over Greenland. And we're hearing all about Greenland and is Canada going to be part of the United States during Trump's, presidency in the second term? Is he going to annex part of Mexico and like we're going to become this big, thing and all that stuff? Well, you go back and you look and you watch like old Alex Jones InfoWars type stuff, and they were, talking about the European or the North American Union and creating a dollar that could be used in the United States of America, Canada, and Mexico. And it was this idea of merging the three and creating like this new North American kind of empire, or this new union between the three countries. Now, as far as Trump's concerned, I'm glad that the dude won and everything. Don't get me wrong. Like, it was fun. It was fun to watch the election night and say, okay, like Cheeto Dick's gonna pull it off again. Great. Like unironically glad that the dude won, given the circumstances. Even if this is all a big show, it's all theater.
Yeah,
cool.
sure.
I like that guy more than the other character. Whatever. Okay. What made me happy about him winning again was it made certain people happy, and I'd rather those people be happy than the people that would have been happy if Kamala had won. And that's kind of all I'll say about the election. Now, as far as his term and as far as his cabinet and the people he's been surrounding himself with versus the people he surrounded himself with in 2016, you got to look at Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and JD Vance. That's the new administration. That's who possibly could be running the show after Trump leaves in 2028, because the dude can't run again. Now, there's been talks like, oh, he's going to, be the vice president in 2028. And he could do that. Nobody's ever tried that move before, and it would be kind of distasteful. So I don't think he's going to do that. Plus, he'd be even older. But seriously, the Silicon Valley connection is immense. Okay, like Elon Musk helped him win, and now Zuckerberg's kissing ass, and that's great. I don't give a fuck. That's their prerogative. That's their, what I'm saying. But Silicon Valley has never supported Trump more than right now, because they want regulations lifted. They want tax, benefits. They want all kinds. They want to turn where I live, where I was born in the 80s, before all this shit was such a big deal. They want to turn into like a little playground, and that's fine, whatever. Nothing I can really do about it. But yes, like, they know that, like you were talking about, artificial intelligence, decentralization, currency, the technology. So he's just saying, okay, guys, like, I want to be the president again. I need your help. He had some fundraisers here in Silicon Valley and some of the more affluent enclaves, private homes, $50,000 plate, dinners, fundraisers. Cool. Don't really give a shit. You know what I'm saying? Because I know that this Trump thing is temporary. What's permanent is globalization, is this thing that we call, globalism and Zionism, the international banking conspiracy, the worshippers of Ramaphin, the Babylonian fucking worship, the fucking Moloch worshippers, the people who stuff the kids in the bowl and set them on, like, that's still going on. And until we really start to understand that we are having this battle with the occult, and you can call it spiritual warfare, you can call it angels versus demons, light versus dark, but that's the omnipresent thing. As far as all these woke versus right wing or base, that's all surface level shit. That's just to divide people and keep people in their corners. When you transcend all that shit and you become like a really a truly open-minded individual, you don't just follow what's going on. And I think a really good barometer of that is Facebook. And you've just seen over the years just how some of these boomers, that's all they do is just buzzwords. They're just as bad as the liberals. They're just oh, goddamn, back in my day, we drank from the hose and we rode in the back of the pickup. Like, they don't care about the future generation. Boomers are like, they're like, They're like Saturn devouring his child. Like they would rather die on top of the hill than be emasculated by the future generations. So they want to hold on to that shit. We were the last real men. We were the last real Americans. They don't give a shit that the Gen X and the millennials and the Zoomers are getting thrown to the wolves. They don't care that they can't own a home. They don't care. They're like, hey, we're gonna die on top.
So, okay, let me ask you this, right? Because I think you and I both agree that there is definitely like another world reset coming of some kind, right? Do you think because your Instagram is mud flood memes, right? A lot of your shit is like mud flood stuff, right? So, do you
Yeah,
think it's going to be like another catastrophe, like a cataclysmic event that happens that resets, or do you think it's going to be like a transitional, like bureaucracy, like we're just going to shift into it through the fucking paperwork, like type of thing?
I think that they're going to use, they can use natural disasters. We've seen what's happened on the East Coast with the hurricanes and the flooding and so on and so forth, and now with this fire in Los Angeles. Once again, they can use natural disasters as a starting point, as a catalyst to create more chaos. But ultimately, it's going to come down to economic warfare. And there was something I was going to say earlier as far as who's going to benefit from this fire. If I had to speak in a more, not so much a conspiratorial, but just kind of just business minded, I would say BlackRock. BlackRock is going to absorb the houses that are uninsured. And that's another subject, another part of this is that a lot of these people don't have insurance and they definitely don't have the money in the bank to just simply rebuild. They don't even have money to move. They're fucked because they're homeless, all their shit's burnt, they're at a shelter or they're at family, who can't house them permanently, and they own their land, but it's not insured. So what are they going to do? They're going to sell it for pennies on the dollar to probably a hedge fund, probably some private equity firm like BlackRock or something that is owned by BlackRock as in an umbrella sense. So that's another layer to this thing is that people who didn't have insurance or they get fucked by their insurance, like maybe they have insurance, but they're not going to get a good settlement for various reasons. And so that's another aspect of it. So I would say, yeah, probably who's going to benefit the most is these companies like BlackRock who are buying up private property at an alarming rate to create rental properties. And then that ties back in to the smart cities and the Great Reset, Carl Schwab kind of style of you will own nothing and be happy, eat the bugs, all that kind of shit. So that's fucked. And I've talked about it before. These people, these big families, these Rockefeller, Bilderberg, all that kind of stuff. They live in an old world sense. They have old homes in old parts of the woods or wherever. You go into their manors or their estates, their castles. What do they have? Old shit, old paintings, old furniture, relics, artifacts. Do you know what I'm saying? So they want to be close to nature. They know that that's the healthier way. They know that that's actually going to become a commodity. They know that that's the true luxury. See, they push us all into the cities. And I'm summarizing this. This is like a nutshell kind of form, but they push the common people into technology. Like, oh, you want technology, you want smart. They've been pushing this smart shit on us for 15 years at least. Smartphones, smart refrigerators, smart washer and dryer, smart vacuums, smart watches, smart butt plugs, all this shit. They don't give a fuck. They just put smart on it and people are like, ooh, smart. Okay. Look, what I'm trying to say is that these people, they are going to be the ones, I've said this before, they are going to be the ones hiking. They are going to be the ones drinking fresh water from a spring. They are going to be the ones going skiing in the Alps and shit because you're not allowed to go into nature because it's bad for the environment because XYZ. They're going to try to sell this green shit, this climate crisis. That's a big thing. Like we can't forget about that. They are literally fucking people over. Okay, for example, just in California, they passed a law that you can't park within 20 feet of a crosswalk, which is just when there's painted lines on the street or when, for streets come together, four-way stop. Do you know how many parking spots that's going to take away statewide? And we're talking statewide, not just in San Francisco, not just in Los Angeles, the whole state. You can't park within 20 feet of a corner. Okay, they don't want
Well,
people to drive.
you know this. You're right. You're 100% right. And I'm gonna go back to like, and I'm only going back to this just because I've been like hyper focused on this shit for the last couple weeks. So like, it's just fresh in my mind. But you know, all of that stuff is what's coming soon, right? The smart city shit where you're talking about, where like everything is smart now. The way that I'm kind of looking at it is, you're gonna have. It's almost the mindset of like, if you can't beat them, join them, in a way. So I'm betting on this reset actually happening. I don't think there's enough white hats that are going to stop this from happening. I think that this is going to happen, right? So on one hand, I'm pouring money into cryptos because I know that all of those smart devices, they're all going to be powered by this type of shit. And if I'm lucky, I can get out with cash before the cash is worthless, buy a tiny house and a piece of land, and go live on a farm while the smart cities do their thing in the future, right? That's goal number one. Goal number two is, you don't get out in time, the fiat collapses, but at least you have some of the new currency that'll be used. So you won't just be surviving off of the UBI cryptos that they dish out. You'll have some Bitcoin, or you'll have some of whatever it is that, you know, that you've stacked up when that comes, right? So if you get scooped up and you get stuck in the smart city, maybe you got a stack of something in there that may be beneficial to you. So your maybe you get the flavored cricket bars instead of like just the original cricket bars, you know?
If your plan comes to fruition, I just want to give you a little bit of hope. I want to give you a little bit of optimism, drop a little white pill for you. If that truly is your plan, that's a great plan, because check it out. This is what a lot of people don't realize. They haven't thought about this. They think, well, you'll just get pushed out. If you go and then it gets worse, like, we'll just push you out of your little happiness that you've managed to carve out, despite of, Satan's plans. It's not true, because what you'll be, and this is going to sound kind of fucked up at first, but just hear me out. You may become what's called a serf. You might be part of like a neo-feudalism, because what I said earlier, right, that they like to have their property, that they have their estates, they have their vast swaths of land in, say, New England, or the Upper Peninsula in the Midwest, like in Michigan or something like that, or maybe in Washington State. And they have their little islands, and they have their little. Okay. Now, where do you think they're going to go when they need shit done? When they need their meat, because they're going to keep eating meat. Don't get me wrong. So they're going to need like local hunters. Okay, where are they going to go when they want to go out for a lark? When they want to like point and stare at the commoners, just like in like medieval Europe. Okay, if your plan goes to fruition, it'll be coming to you. And yeah, there's going to be a little bit of a class system. There's going to be a little bit of a belittlement to you, but you'll be still doing essentially what you plan to be doing, which is live in a rural or countryside, have access to fresh water, and they'll allow you that. They'll allow you that because they're going to need people to do things. They're going to need people to go and look at and say, ha, ha, ha. Okay, they're not going to self-isolate and become hooked up to the AI, global intelligence like Lawnmower Man or fucking The Matrix. They're going to want to go and look at common people and say, hey, you fishmonger, I need some fish, or I need some lobster tails for my, get me some, or hey, woodworker, I need a new door for my, like they're still going to need, because they like that shit. They're still going to need people that can work with their hands and fix their fucking toilets and all that shit, because they're not going to learn. They don't give a fuck. So they're still going to need people in rural areas, and they'll allow a certain amount of people. They're not going to build them houses every year. They're not going to build them big, project houses like what they want to do in the smart cities. But if you live in a rural area in New England, or the Upper Peninsula in the Midwest, or in the Northeast, like Seattle, Washington, Oregon, maybe even parts of rural California, wherever they are, they're going to need servants. They're going to need people that know how to fix shit and build shit for them. Work on their antique cars.
See, that sounds terrible. I don't want to be
No.
a fucking slave to these people. I mean, I guess I already am technically, but you know.
No, that's why I said it's going to sound kind of fucked up, but think about in terms of a hypothetical. Would you rather hypothetically be doing your thing and have to help them a little bit just so they don't fucking kill you, or would you rather live in one of those fucking smart cities in a cuck hotel?
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, yeah. You take the better of two evils, I guess. You know, that's the whole idea. But
Yeah.
you know, just to touch a little bit on what you're saying about like the parking spots going away, right? And that's what sparked
Mhm.
my thoughts about what I said was because you know people have always laughed at us, right, when we talk about this kind of shit for years. Anytime I talk about smart city initiatives, they're like, whatever, dude. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, nobody cares. But you're seeing it happen with what you're talking about. They know, and when I say they, I'm just talking about the schmucks, the parasites that run the world. Okay, they know that certain technologies are about to get unleashed on the public. Okay, every so often, a technology gets unleashed on the public that changes the entire world. Okay, electricity, the internet, right, the automobile. Well, we're at this point now where we don't have one of these technologies that's about to revolutionize the world. We have like five or six all at the same time that have all been developed to a point that are like shit works now, right? Whether you're talking about self-driving vehicles, autonomous robots, right? AI, super fucking intelligence, blockchain technologies. Like, there's all these things that are literally about to come together right at 2030. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
it's just super obvious to me that, hey, yeah, of course there's not going to be as many parking spaces because the cars won't park, bro. Nobody's going to be driving them. They're going to pick us up, take us where we're supposed to go, drop us off, and then go on to the next person. And if you own a car, you're going to have like a super special fucking, like a class 3 firearm license type of situation to own your fucking gas powered 80s muscle car. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it'll be another case of the have and the have-nots. Like you see people, not saying that he's like public enemy number one or anything, but just an example of a person that people are fairly familiar with. You see like a guy like Jay Leno. He's like a car collector. He's got all these old like steam-powered cars that run on fucking coal. And he like fucking winds them up and drives around. Okay, that's what it's going to be like to just have like a normal car, like say like a muscle car from the 70s or shit, even a car from the 90s or early 2000s, whatever. And yeah, it'll be a luxury to have a car in, say the next 15, 20, 30 years, something like depending on your timeline, is it'll be a luxury. And so we'll be having traditional firearms. So we'll having a fireplace in your home. So we'll having a gas stove. Just the small things, the things we take for granted right now. And you and I are old enough to know, old enough to see. We've been around the sun a few times. Like we've seen shit become antiquated that was pivotal or deemed essential in our childhood. There's just certain contraptions, certain appliances, certain even just ways of thinking, ways of talking that have become antiquated due to societal pressures or because of innovation or just because it's actually cheaper to get the new version than to fix the old version, television sets or whatever, it doesn't matter. Okay, so the point is that in terms of this fire, in terms of a reset and all this stuff, the only thing that's going to be reset is the mind in the sense of what you will consider a luxury. That's what they've always pushed on the bourgeoisie, on the middle class, on the working poor is you want the newest technology, you want the state of the art this or the cutting edge, all that crap. And the nefarious thing now, as before it was just all marketing, it was just to make money and shit. How are they going to make money when you're not buying anything? So what are they owning now? They're not going to own your money. They're going to own you. And then people say, well, why do they even need us then? If they could create this like smart shit, it's because they don't want to fucking live in it. They want us like, I don't know. I'm not even gonna like lie to you and to the people listening and the people that will listen to this in the future. I don't know why they want. I think it's to break us down, to put us into these big cities and to break our minds, and they get off on it. They still need us for something.
It's what you said earlier, man. The negative energy, bro. The
Yeah.
interdimensional psychic vampires, bro. Like they literally feed off of our suffering, right? If you want to look at it that way. And that's what I think it is. Going back to the spiritual warfare thing, I think that there's literally calm entities that will siphon the negative low vibrational energy off of you. And no better way to have that coming off of you than if you're just living in a fucking cube staring at screens, all nutted out because you're jacked into the fucking VR Pornhub 25 hours a day because, it's the Matrix.
I mean, we're already there, bro. There's people that are already they're spending more time doing that kind of shit, escapism with technology, technological escapism. Because books used to be escapism, and people used to make fun of people who read books. Now, people who read books are considered like, oh, you're intellectual, or you're trying to break away from your screen addiction or something like that. But people used to make fun of people and say, oh, you're escaping reality reading all those books. You're a fucking nerd. You're a cat lady, you're a shut-in. Why you read so many books? Go out and live your life. You know what I mean? Go dance with a pretty girl. So now we've got the VR headsets, but the VR headsets are exponentially more, horrific compared to a fucking book. You can sit down a book, whatever. It's not big. To put on this apparatus that connects you to the internet and could be subjecting you to all kinds of subliminal, visual and auditorial message. We don't even know what the hell this thing. I've never put one on. I'm kind of proud of that, I guess, or whatever. I've never put one of those things on. I don't really want to. But the thing is we don't even know what the hell it's subjecting people to on a subliminal level, as far as rapid fire images or, voice to skull. You're familiar with voice to skull technology.
Oh yeah, man. And my opinion about that type of thing, man, is that type of technology is in almost all the chips now, right? Like they can hit you with the voice to skull shit from your phone. They can hit it through the Wi-Fi signals. Never mind. You want to talk about millimeter wave technology like 5G and stuff like that. So, like I have two VR headsets that I haven't played in over a year, but it's like I get it, and I'm with you on that. But it's like, I'm like the type of guy where it's like I'm torn in between the two worlds, man. It's like part of me really loves the technology, right?
And I'm not my job or my responsibility or my position is I'm not here to judge you or anybody else that does that kind of shit. Like
sure.
I'm not a fucking I'm not a contrarian, although I could be perceived as one in some circles, but I'm not directly a contrarian. Like I don't have to go against the grain or like I believe in doing truly what you want to do. Now, what you want to do might change depending on certain, events or certain contemplation, but denying yourself is betraying yourself. So when you do something that's considered naughty by the truther community or by the conspiracy or the esoteric schizo-based lifter, whatever, I can run over to that side and have some points. I can run over this. But what I'm saying is that you can't shelter yourself. You can't shelter your children. You can't shelter your family. You have to let people make mistakes and come to these realizations that maybe it's not the best thing to, eat seed oils and drink high fructose corn syrup every day. And it's probably not the best thing in the world to go and get, 18 fucking different vaccines before you're 6 years old or, anything, any of that kind of shit. Those are like big ones. It's like what you do, your day-to-day life. But if somebody feels like going to the fucking movies because they want to just watch a movie at the movie theater or they feel like drinking a can of Coca-Cola, it's not going to fucking kill you. One trip to Disneyland is not going to turn you into a fucking satanic pedophile. You have to be grounded that you are strong enough to indulge once in a great fucking while if you feel like it. Because if you have the urge to, eat a bag of potato chips or something, hey, if you've gone your whole life without doing it because of the way you were raised, more power to you. But don't fucking gaslight people and make people feel like shit because they're not this or that. You see a lot of that with the vegan shit, with the vegan community. They try to guilt trip people and say, oh, you're a murderer, you're eating flesh and all that kind of stuff. Well, That's what they're trying to do to people with this climate shit. And it's going to come to a point, if we live long enough, mark my words, where people who live in even just suburban or semi-rural, but obviously traditionally rural areas on the farm or something, they're going to be shamed. They already are. I mean, what's the classic, connection or classic association is somebody who's rural talk like this, say, "Oh, what the hell, the big city boy coming out here and fucking dirt, dirt, dirt," like they have an
Right.
accent. They have a fucking accent different. You ever study the phenomena that if somebody talks like a hillbilly, that they're perceived to have less intelligence just because they're simply speaking with like an accent? And then
I have
conversely,
I have thought about it, but I've never like studied it. But because
yeah,
I'm from the city and I moved to Alabama for a while in my life, and then like I used to think about that. I was like, why did people? Because I used to think about it too, right? I used to listen to them when I first moved there and be like, man, these people sound like straight rednecks, bro. Like they don't know
yeah,
shit. But after living there, you realize, no, these are just normal people. They're just as smart as everybody else. Like they just have an
yeah.
accent, right? And then you're like, why
And
is
then
that? Why do I feel that way?
right, right. And then conversely, when somebody has a British accent, they're perceived as being more intelligent because they have a British accent. And that's why British people have a British accent, they get hired to do all those nature documentaries. Because when you're watching a documentary, you want to hear Nigel
Yeah, you want to hear
tell
David
you,
Attenborough, dude.
yeah, and the majestic falcon spreads you don't want to hear Cletus or Clyde or Ferb from down the road. You don't want to be like, and in my observations, the dinosaurs emerged from the primordial. You
That's a
don't want,
great YouTube channel fucking idea. Like nature
yeah,
documentaries, 4K, David Attenborough style, but fucking Cletus is the
mhm,
narrator, dude.
yeah. But that's the psychological effect, and I'm just bringing that up to shed light on the psychological effect. Psychological effect extends to how the Rockefellers changed medicine, and we still see that today with Fauci, the white lab coats. When somebody tells you something to these normies, when somebody tells them something, the guy's wearing a white lab coat. Okay, that was done on purpose. Doctors and physicians and people who studied medicine and other medicinal aspects, they didn't wear white fucking lab coats. That's another psyop. That's another trick. You know what I mean? They got the stethoscope around their neck for no reason. It's just all visual cues to get you to acknowledge them as a symbol of authority, false authority. Okay. So when we talk about smart cities, we talk about the reset and all that stuff, that's what they're going to do. They're going to use those kinds of psychological tricks. So if anybody's like on the fence about this shit, watch out for that shit. Mark my words, they will start shaming people who are not keeping track of their carbon footprint. All this shit's going to be voluntary at first. They're going to start putting on the food. I saw this on the legitimate news. They were talking about they're going to start putting, in addition to the calories and the sodium and the protein and all that kind of shit, the carbohydrates, they're going to put a little thing saying how much carbon what's your carbon. Okay. And then that's going to lead to like, well, counting your calories. Now you're going to be counting your carbon. And like, oh, like that person looks like a heavy carbon consumer. The guy's driving a
I've been
car. He's
saying for years that they're gonna start tracking um you by like the molecule, let's say, right?
Mhm.
Like the technology is there for them to literally track by the fucking calorie what you consume. You know what I mean? And there's another thing I remember reading a few years ago. Like, there's ideas of them trading us on the stock market. Remember, you said earlier about them owning you. It's not that they're going to own like you as a whole. It's like anything else, right? You're going to be parsed out on the market, down to probably like a molecular level because we have the technology to do this, believe it or not. So they're going to be trading like your health, the status of your cholesterol will be traded on some, exchange somewhere. Um, and they'll know like you had X amount of caffeine today, and you had X amount of vitamin C today, and you had X amount of fucking whatever else today. It'll get to that point. And a lot of that'll have to do with what I think is happening now with like this transition and what you were saying earlier with like this new Patriot Act that's coming, like this new Great Reset. There's something that's about to happen. I don't know what the Black Swan event's going to be. Some shit's going to go down, and they're going to be like, oh, we have to fucking track, every fucking single thing, and it's just the way it's going to be.
The thing is that, in my opinion, let's assume that this is all a big, show and all that kind of stuff, is the powers that be put the guard down. They stop censoring things as much. The level of censorship on social media in 2024 leading up to the election compared to 2020 is vastly different. It's way easier to get away with having spicy memes or good information that doesn't get surpassed or suppressed in the algorithm as much, all that kind of stuff. And it's because, and this isn't like news to everybody or anything, a lot of people know this, is they need white males to sign up for the military because they are planning a mass invasion, occupation of the Middle East, with Israel expanding already with the fall of Syria. You have to understand, they took Mount Hermon, they want Damascus, they want to expand the borders of Israel. Israel's already gotten bigger since the departure of Bashar Assad, when he left Syria and Syria like fell to the rebels, were backed by the CIA. Well, it's obviously a whole other story. So what's coming is they want to return. They lie by omission more than they lie directly. So when Trump said, "Hey, I'm going to make America great again," and this and that, this is going away, and we're going to bring this back, and that's coming back, and this, he's telling the truth. The dude ain't lying. But what it's going to lead to is, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just is what it is. Yeah, they want people to feel empowered by their own Americanism. Great. They want people to be able to have clear, gender, like there's man and woman. Great. All for it on paper. But the goal is, once again, to prop up this Zionist occupational government, the AIPAC, thing, and more shit's coming out about that. And they can play cat and mouse a little bit and say, well, these guys don't support, the war in Israel or Gaza, and they blah, 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 blah. Okay, I don't, like I've said before, I've told people before, and I want to get into a big thing about the Israel and Palestine thing, is what this is about. It's about controlling the narrative of, okay, you're not a Wokey, so go die for Israel. Because if you don't kiss Israel's ass, then you're woke. It doesn't work like that. There's always a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, and so on option. We're not A and B group. At least I'm not. Okay?
Yeah, I just wonder if, I don't know if it'll be, it could be like so black and white that it's obvious. But I always just think that it'll be a little bit more subtle, right? It'll be like, hey, bomb goes off somewhere, they point the finger at Iran. Now we're boots on the ground fighting Iran, which isn't so obvious that that's like a Zionist agenda, but it is, right? So it's, your regular schmuck is just going to be like, oh yeah, we got to go fuck up Iran, right? Like they want to fuck around and find out, send some freedom to Iran. That's what most people will think is happening, right? Whereas you and I we know that behind the scenes, like there's some like bigger agenda that's pushing that, war with Iran. Like it's always been on the table. So, but
yeah, my opinion on that is, okay, if you have a threat halfway around the world or halfway across the plane, I would say more with the latter. Why the hell would you want to be over there if they're threatening our lives here? In other words, when shit gets bad enough, and I've said this before, when shit gets bad enough where something's popping off here, where I live with my family and my friends and the people that I care and love, then I want to be here. I don't want to be over there. But they try to tell you, well, you got to go over there, otherwise they're going to come over here. And I say, well, let's call their bluff, because the Iraq War, Desert Storm, Vietnam, World War II, World War One, all we saw, speaking from an American perspective, is more dead Americans dying on foreign soil, which ironically was their fatherland or their motherland, speaking World War One, World War Two. So then we look in a broader aspect, what do? We just killed a bunch of white people. That's all we did. Now, if there was a war with another race, people would be pointing that out. They'd say, why is there always a civil war in Africa? It's like tribalism, right? They're always killing each other in Africa. Okay, we got North and South Korea. They're genetically the same, but they're technically, they don't like each other. You got Ukraine and Russia. Okay, I don't care what anybody says. Genetically, they're basically the same. Now, Russia's a big place. So you got different kinds of people, but the types of people, okay, they're just borders, but they're brother wars. It doesn't matter if it's white versus white, Asian versus Asian, blacks versus, they're all brother wars. And so that's one of the things that's part of globalism, is getting rid of this identity, because they say, oh, nationalism's bad, racism, blah, 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 blah. They don't want true harmony. They want people going to foreign soil to protect their interests and cut down. Okay, and I don't want to get into a big thing about it. That would be like a separate show. But that's a tool that they use, is getting people to get rid of any identity and replace it with their identity. And their identity is, you be a good global citizen. You eat the fucking bug. It's all a big fucking experiment. I don't know why the fucking vaccine was an experiment, and they're experimenting on us. How hard would it have been to get billions of people to take an experimental vaccine for no good reason? So they had to tell people that there was a fucking pandemic. Okay? They want to see what will happen if people eat fucking pounds and pounds of bugs every day. Do you know that the chitlin, the shell of crickets and cockroaches and all other shit that they want, it's bad for us. It's fucking inflammatory. We don't want to be eating that shit every day. It'll fuck us up. Meat's better. Red meat's better. Milk's better. Eggs better. Avocados and shit. Natural fat. All of
Yeah,
it.
but the best way that they can cure your disease, which really means to preserve your disease, is to feed you fucking shit, right?
Mhm.
Like, you want to get into like word magic stuff, that's my perspective on that. That's why I don't go to the fucking doctor, man, because they're
Yeah.
here to cure / preserve your fucking illness.
They're experimenting on us because they want to figure out, they're using us as a tool of process of elimination, because they can say, hey, let's get these guys to try this because we're not sure if it's going to work. And they go, oh, that didn't work, because they're trying to figure out how to live longer. They're trying to figure out the avenues to immortality or to life longevity,
Yeah.
life extension. Look up Kurzweil. That guy.
Yeah,
He's a
Ray
big.
Kurzweil.
Yeah.
Ray Kurzweil, man. I listen, man. I've been following Ray Kurzweil since, I don't know, fucking 2014 or some shit. And I'm telling you, man, when you really follow these futurists, right, and these technocrats and these people, and you like pay attention to what they're talking about, and you like watch what's happening, you can clearly see. And in my opinion, my friend, I think that they've already got that longevity thing figured out. And here's why: because going back to some of the financial shit that I've been digging into, right? Some of the bigger markets are about to start moving on the longevity sector, right? So like all of these like these bio stocks, these companies that work on longevity, making people live longer and like reversing aging and all that shit. That is about to be a huge industry. So that's only gonna happen after like the fucking parasite class has figured it out and they got their own little fucking, you know what I mean? Like they got their stash of the tech somewhere, and then they're gonna start allowing the public to have a little bit of access to this. So
Mhm.
we may see like life expectancies for us increase to 120, 150 if we're lucky, But those schmucks, they've got the 800-year lifespans figured out probably.
Mhm. And that's fine. More power to them. Whatever. If people want to fuck around with that shit, that's fine. But don't lie about it. But see, that's the thing, is they have to lie about it. That's part of the deal. It's kind of like they like it like that. They like working in the shadows. They like a veil of secrecy, you know, and that's fine. We are all, you know, entitled to a certain expectation of privacy. You know, like you don't want somebody knowing when you take a shit or when you decide to take a shower or, you know, any of that kind of stuff. Okay, so but everything that they do is amplified. Everything they do is on a bigger level because it's all by comparison. And so maybe that's why they keep us around too. Maybe that's another reason they keep us around or whatever, is because they want to be able to have something to compare themselves to remind them that they're, because if it was like all equal, if everybody was on this and we're living in like some type of like Shangri-La, you know, some type of utopia, there's certain people, at least now, at least currently, that have the kind of personality, they have a sociopathic or narcissistic kind of personality where that actually would be kind of like hell because they're like, hey, I'm not the winner. I'm not like the big dog. I'm not the king. I'm not the, you know, I can't compare myself to anybody lower than me. You know, it's like India, like they have this like caste system. I've been looking into this India thing too, because there's been all this talk about, you know, immigration and Elon Musk wanting to bring, you know, people on H1B vaccines, visas. Um, and their system's fucked. Like they don't reward generosity. Generosity is seen as a weakness. It's like it's feminine to like care about other people. It's all about getting on top, trampling over people, both figuratively and, you know, like metaphorically and physically, trampling over people to get to a higher position in life. You study the Hinduism and stuff, and people think it's all like Eastern spirituality and like, you
Is that why
know,
all the
fucking
scammers come from there, dude? Because they just don't give a
yeah,
fuck.
exactly. That's exactly the whole fucking culture is a scammer culture. Yeah, of course, there's a few good ones, whatever. That we're not talking about that.
You got
We're
some
talking
doctors
about
in there, but the
yeah,
scammers
we're
are
talking about the
fucking
core. We're talking about the well, being a doctor, but that's the thing. That's why they like being doctors. That's why they like being doctors because it's seen as a high
dude, it's a
position.
fucking
No,
scam, dude.
yeah, and
Holy shit.
I get what you're saying. That's a good one. But what I'm saying too is fundamentally, it's seen as a good thing because it's high in the caste system in America. Because if they're in India and they're like, "Oh, I'm good to go to the United to be a doctor," good, good. And then their family's like, "Yes, good, good," because that's high in the caste system in America. Like, oh, you're gonna marry a doctor? Oh, you're gonna marry a lawyer? Like, okay, there's a thing in India. Okay, if you hire a plumber, because they have those there, surprisingly, you know, they do have running water and stuff. If you hire an Indian plumber in India and he comes to your house to fix your toilet, he's like, he's kind of embarrassed. Like he's a little emasculated because he has to like work on your toilet. So what they do, this is all common knowledge and shit. You can look this up. They purposely do a bad job. They purposely leave messes. They purposely fuck something up, and then they have a little grin on their face, and then they feel like, okay, I've kind of like I've kind of balanced things out a little bit. Yeah, I had to work on your toilet, but ha ha ha, I left a mess, or I didn't do it right. So you're gonna have me come back again. It's gonna inconvenience you, and they get a kick out of it. Okay, and that's just like that's what I'm trying to say. These people at the top are the same way. You know, we'll give you a job. We'll pay you $500,000 a year. Well, fuck, we'll pay you $1 million a year. We don't give a fuck. It's all funny money, anyways. But when we say jump, you say how high. When we say, you know, suck, you say how hard. Because that's the trade-off. Is you get to have a house, you get to have a family, you get to buy fucking nice cars, and you get to go on trips to fucking Switzerland, go skiing. But you are summoned back to that hall. You're summoned back to that nexus called your career. And they get off on it. They control these fucking people and they get off on it. Just like older siblings would like use their younger siblings as a remote control when the remote control was lost. Or hey, go get me a soda, pipsqueak. You know, like I don't know if you have older brothers or not. You see what I'm saying. It's like that. That's how this whole
yeah.
fucking thing operates is like I'm gonna do this and you have to suffer. So they can fuck with people psychologically with this damn fire and say, yeah, we took the water offline. That's why the hydrants don't work. That's why there's low pressure. Ha ha. And what the fuck are you gonna do about it? And you know what people do now? They go, damn liberals, fucking wokeism. It's like, no, dude, you're missing the point, man. They're fucking with
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. No, that's a really good point, man. I you know, and I've been trying to get some of my friends to kind of see through that first layer, right? Because I think that's kind of where a lot of people, at least in my circle, have gone. You know, I've seen a lot of them shift, let's call it to the right, you know,
Hmm.
and they get past that first layer of like, let's call it truth, right? Like once they start getting through that first layer of truth, they think that they're there and they're like, boom. And then, like you said, they get stuck in that first layer where it's like the fucking liberals. And it's like, no, dude, you just scratched the surface of like what's going on here. You know, there's so many deeper layers than that. The whole like left right paradigm, the ideologies you see everybody arguing about on X, that's just layer one of shit that's happening. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? But
That's
yeah,
just
it's
the way it
super.
is, man.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of beautiful when you start to like romanticize it, and you feel like, hey, I put in the effort. I've done the, the research. I've experienced, I've talked to a lot of different people. I've had past experiences, where I've observed these types of psychological phenomenons, or I've had to interact with people they have that fluoride stare, for lack of a better term. Their pineal gland is totally calcified. It's all true to a certain extent. Now it gets memed, it gets like put into this kind of realm of hyperbole, but at the end of the day, it's all true to a certain extent. Stereotypes exist for a reason. Stereotypes are based on truth. And I've experienced all that shit, man. Like I've been around the block a few times, and I've had all kinds of different friends and all kinds of different experiences, and that's why I feel entitled, or I feel, that I have a right to speak about these things. I'm not somebody who just, took the red pill back in 2017 or something like that. Like and no offense to those people, because you got to fucking start somewhere, just like you said, but you got to get past. You can't think that the first door is the last door. And you have to understand that those doors are further and further apart as you go down the hall. It's like, people like to use Alice in Wonderland and the rabbit hole, and that's cool. It's a good metaphor, it's a good analogy. But what does she do when she gets down there? What happened? There's fucking doors. It's not like she just goes down the hole and that's the end of the fucking story. There's all these damn doors she's got to go through, and she's got to find keys, and she's got to get real small, and then she's got to get big and back and back. And the fucking rabbits running around with the watches saying, I'm late for a very important date. It's all like, if you want to go down the rabbit hole, well, that's cool. But then there's doors, and those go in different places, and you might end up back at where you started sometimes. You get all fucked up and everything. That's the whole point with this gender thing and all this stuff is, yeah, it's all fucked. And it's all meant to create confusion. They want you fucking confused. You ever been confused when you're trying to do something and you can't, and you need to like take a moment to breathe and like recollect your thought, get your bearings straight? Well, imagine you're just in a constant fucking state of confusion and you don't even realize it. You only feel confused when you're just totally overstimulated. But your actual day-to-day life is in a state of confusion, like a stupor, like a haze, you know. And I'm not saying that that's how you are. I'm saying that's how some people are, but they function. So they're thinking like, hey, I'm okay. Like I'm not in a constant state of confusion, but they actually fucking are, compared to how it could be if all these fucking filters were taken off, all this fog that's, in their mind for various reasons. And a lot of people just think, hey, all I got to do is put an American flag on my car, put on the MAGA hat, and call people liberals whenever they piss me off. And just, it's like that meme where they're like, hey, everybody I don't like is Hitler. Remember that was like a meme for a while? Like, oh, liberals just think, oh, well, it works fucking both ways. And you can't just call somebody a commie or a liberal or a woke-tard or a cuck or a fag or whatever. You can't just use that as a catch-all. there's got to be some there's got to be some reason behind that. You have to understand the deeper meaning to this shit. It's like not everybody that picks up a guitar is fucking Jimi Hendrix. Like, and well, not everybody that picks up a MAGA hat is a hero. Just like how the left thinks, oh, I put a rainbow fucking sticker on my window and then I'm like a hero or I'm a fucking ally. It works both ways. You got to have um, some perspective. You have to have a reason to fight. You have to have something. Have to have like the French call it raison d'être, a reason to live. And if your reason to live is just to fucking argue with people on the internet, then you're not. it's you know what I'm saying? Like I'm just here to reinforce these ideas in case anybody else has already had them. I'm not here to really like own the libs. It's just a matter of understanding. Just it's perception. Just pay attention and do the exact fucking opposite of what the TV or the fucking mainstream media tells you, and you'll be fine. That's like rule number one. Just do the fucking opposite of you see people going off a fucking cliff like lemmings, like zombies. Okay, you acknowledge that. Now just go the other fucking way and you won't fall off the cliff. That's like rule number one. And but hey, I mean that's the way this fucking thing works. It's not easy to be at a level where you can understand this, but it's possible.
Yeah, it takes time, man. It's not something I've learned over the years. It takes time to get somebody awake enough, not woke enough, but awake enough to
Hmm.
really like see through all of the bullshit. None of us really know what the fuck is going on, but
Yeah.
I think people like you and I and a few others, like we have at least a good enough grasp on what's going on that we can kind of weave through the bullshit, and
Hmm.
see something at the end, and it's like my co-host, we did the show. It started with me just coming on his show, and it was a conspiracy episode, and it was like a 2 hour long episode of me just giving him, and I went deep right off the bat, and they were not conspiracy minded at all, and I went straight in on Saturn, Death Cult, Black Cube, fucking right out the gate, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
from there, like slowly brought them in on all the shit, the clones, the fucking, the REM cycle, like, mind control shit, just it's so much stuff. And it took like 2 years to get them to the point to where now they send me shit all the time. They're like, yo, I saw this article, bro, and like this is what they're really saying. And I'm like, yeah, man, I think you're right. Like, I think that's what they're really saying, right? And it's like, it's
Hmm.
interesting, but it does take some time and it takes focus. And you definitely can't get too black pilled because if you get too black pilled, it's easy to just say, fuck it. I've been there. So,
Yeah. I
but
mean, I had a buddy, and I said, and before he died, because he was like a pretty cool guy when I was a teenager when we first met, and over the years he just got more and more blue pilled, but like kind of like not like a like a normie. He died before COVID, so anyways, he killed himself, and I said, well, he got purple pilled because he was kind of blue pilled, but he was more black pilled, and you get when you mix blue and black, you get kind of like a purpley kind of. So he got kind of like purple pilled, and I went after he killed himself or unalive. Sorry, I said that on the air, whatever. After he died, I went and looked at the kinds of channels that I found his YouTube channel. I had already been subscribed to it, but I went deep into his YouTube account and I went and I looked at the kinds of channels that he was subscribed to, the kinds of things that he liked. He had his playlist public, and it was all black pill shit. But it was liberal black pills. It wasn't like doomer pill, like right wing, black pills. It was left wing black pills. And I said, well, no wonder he was depressed. No wonder he was like feeling off because he wasn't a dumb guy. He was actually kind of intelligent, and
I
he
used
was
to
a.
be in that. I used to be in that camp, man. Back in like 2011, 2012. I was like super. I was a hippie, bro. Like I literally did not wear shoes. Everybody who listens to the
Hmm.
show knows the story. I didn't wear shoes for a whole year, right? I was grounding, like hardcore grounding,
Hmm.
tree hugger as fuck, right?
Yeah.
Bro, I'm talking longboarding around Orlando with no fucking shoes, Walmart, restaurants, work, you name it, no shoes. I was deep, and at the same time, at that time, I was like really, really considering like quitting life and just like joining the Peace Corps and going to fucking South America or Africa and just like digging wells or some shit, right? Like that's how
Hmm.
black pilled I was. I was like, fuck it. Like the only thing I could do in this world to be of any assistance is to just like not wear shoes and go dig a well in Africa.
Yeah.
Um,
Become a slave essentially.
Right. So like I've been like in that fucking mind space before.
Hmm.
And it took a long time, and there's like that old saying, like if you're not, um, you know, if you're not, I think it's Democrat and Republican is the words they use. If you're not Democrat by the time you're 25, you have no heart. If you're not a Republican by the time you're 35, you have no brain.
Hmm.
And luckily, I think I went through that cycle pretty quickly. And now I'm just like out of the ideology, right? I'm
Hmm.
35, 36, and that ideology is, that shit was gone 10 years ago at least, you know?
Yeah,
So,
no, I mean that's a, you know, it's kind of like a meme in itself, is that people, they feel lost, they feel like they have no direction, and then there's these, oh, conveniently there's these avenues, there's these people that'll like take you in like a fucking cult and say, oh, you know, this is what you're supposed to do if you feel like you're not supposed to like really just experience being an individual, experience being free. And that's the problem with being young, is they try to entrap you while you're young. And so I think that that's something, because I'm 41. I just turned 41 last month. And you're, you know, so we're in the same age group. You remember a lot of the things that I remember. And like I've said before, so I won't go on it for too long, but is one of the ways they get you is with music, they get you with drugs, they get you with how you dress, what kind of movies you like. It's all media based, kind of like consumerism kind of shit, which is fine to a certain extent. It's something that everybody can kind of relate to. Nothing wrong with being like cultured, you know. But the thing is that what I noticed is all the people that I knew in the 90s when I was an adolescent, teenager, I was 17 when 9/11 happened, is that the people who smoked dope and listened to Tool and, you know, like heavy metal kind of music and all that kind of stuff, a lot of them ended up being very liberal, very like with Thing in 2020, or even just in 2016 with the BLM and the Trump and blah 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 blah.
dude,
Okay.
so true, man. Because that's me, and I lost. No, I'm not gonna say I lost all my friends, but I lost a lot of friends in 2020. And I'm the metalhead, right? I'm the Tool,
Hmm.
the pot smoking Tool fanatic metalhead kid. But I'm like one of so few in my huge group of those people that like made it through that to this side
Hmm.
of the thing. You know what I'm saying? Like the rest of them are still like I still see them posting on social media like just the most ridiculous NPC shit, and I'm like, bro, like,
Yeah, and it works. And
you know,
it works both ways. I mean, I know some people that had that prescribed to that lifestyle, and then now they're Trump
and they
supporters, they're
broke
MAGA,
free.
they're,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, but because it wasn't an issue when we were teenagers, we weren't even old enough to vote, so it wasn't such a paradigm as it is now. But the thing is that it's like people who are into punk rock, you know, a lot of them towed the line, you know, like people
hmm
who are into Green Day and Rage Against the Machine and all that
that's
crap.
what I was gonna say. Rage Against the Machine is the perfect example, right? Like,
Hmm.
you know, anybody who was a fan of Rage Against the Machine, like they towed the line. They
Yeah, they got
shilled.
molded. Well, you got
Yeah.
molded because I think about, like, you're a teenager and you're smoking dope, you know, you're smoking weed or whatever, you're doing mushrooms, you're dropping acid, especially back then before there was all this like lawlessness, when there was more like of a law and order society. You had to watch out for the cops because you were a pot smoker. So you like inherently were like, oh, I don't like cops because I smoke weed and they're going to try to take my weed away. Or if you were into skateboarding or graffiti or just kind of like malicious mischief, like just going out at night and fucking with people's shit, or, you know, just being one of those kinds of kids, is it's like you were told like, okay, don't like cops, you know, fuck authority, anarchy, you know, cringe kind of shit like that. Well, that led them to Satanism, and then Satanism led them to like, hey, maybe I'm a bisexual or some shit like that, you know, and I like this and I like that. It's all liberal. It's all like Marxist. What's that? That school, you know, from Germany that supposedly took over after World War II. The not the Franklin, but the you know, the cultural Marxists, but they have another name, and they infiltrated college campuses in the 50s and 60s, and they led to the hippie movement with the boomers, trying to get the boomers to like tune in, drop out, you know, with Timothy Leary giving everybody fucking acid to fry their brains and put them in the MK Ultra experiment. That's what I'm trying to say. It didn't start when Trump said, "Hey, I'm going to run for president" in 2015. It started all the way the fuck back in the 50s when they started doing MK Ultra experiments, and then here comes Vietnam, and here comes Charlie Manson, here comes the, you know, all that shit. getting people to adopt Eastern spirituality, you know, the Beatles going to Maharishi and all that shit. That was the foundation for this shit. And the big shift was in the 70s when they started to associate people who had more conservative values, more traditional values, with being ticky tacky, you know, like dumbass, you know, redneck shit, and not looking at it like what is best for our society, what is best for our economy. As a, you know, they're, oh, money's evil, man. Like you got to just smell the flowers, man. Like, yeah, it sounds really like innocent, but it leads you down this road where you'll just go along with whatever is the opposite, like the Silicon Valley experiment. And you can look this up, like people like Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, people who started Apple computers, all the old like boomer Silicon Valley people, they had this like vision of the future where you use technology for good and blah blah, and then somewhere along the way it got like taken over, and now we have this shit that we were talking about, this, you know, man-made horrors beyond our comprehension kind of shit. It was supposed to be this like idea, but then people looked into that and they said, no, that was a fucking psyop too. And that had to do with Stanford Research Institute, and you can look that up, and that's a whole, you know, can of worms. And they used the boomers and the hippie movement and all that shit to get to where we are now. That's where all this shit started, is getting people to just think, oh man, like I don't want to fucking do anything, man. I just want to play the guitar and ground and, you know, Shinrin Yoku. It's like, yeah, all that stuff's good for you, but they co-opted it, they hijacked it, and then they got everybody to take a vaccine, and they got everybody to believe that cows farting is going to, you know, destroy our planet.
Not everybody.
No, not everybody, fortunately.
Not fucking everybody. And shout out to you motherfuckers who see the truth, right? Or at least see through the bullshit. Because I don't know if any of us know what the truth is on a lot of this stuff anymore, but we know it's not true. That's for fucking sure. Um, but hey, man, dude, listen, we've been at this shit. What time is it, dude? We've been at this for like 2 hours, which
Hmm.
for me is pretty long. Uh,
Hmm.
but you know, is there anything else that you want to like definitely touch on before we shut this thing down?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I always like try to end on a good note, you know, and I try to tell people I know it's not obtainable. I'm not gonna, you know, sound like, you know, some from some ivory tower or something, like everything worked out for me. Like I'm not perfect. I get tripped up, you know. This shit gets to me sometimes, and you know, I'm not professing to have any fucking answers at all. I can only speak from experience. But what I will try to impart on people that are listening is that you have to try to carve out something that's truly your own. You have to find something that's beyond their control, whether it's, you know, trying to fall in love, trying to start a family with people that you're already in love with, you know, try to break away from this shit in a way that it's not engaging them. In other words, some people, like I said earlier, they like to go on the internet. They like to fuck with people. They like to argue. They like to try to own the libs. It's not about that. It's about owning yourself. It's about atonement. It's about self reflection. It's about figuring out what makes you tick, not trying to prove what the other side ticks on is wrong. It's about finding what you do is right, and having some inner peace, having some understanding that they're constantly trying to trick you, and just try to see past those tricks and not fall into these other pitfalls, and not don't make this thing your whole identity, and don't think that you have to wear a new shirt every day that says, you know, fucking, you know, what was the one, you know, Brandon, you know, is a queer, you know, whatever clever shirts that you see on Amazon or Instagram, you know, people trying to hawk their clothes and say, hey, look at me, I got a shirt that says fuck Joe Biden, so like, can I come to the beer drinking contest and we can own the libs by, you know, smoking cigars and, you know, all that shit? Like, that's fine, but don't make that your fucking personality. Try to find the harmony in what they can't take from you. What can't they take from you? Your heredity, your genetics, your family, your friends, just your whole essence. Try to make that threatening just by its own existence, not trying to defame the other side. Like, fuck the other side. Let them dig their own grave. You know, it's like Jesus Christ said, let the dead bury the dead. We got more important things to do right now. So that's my advice. Is just don't let them control you by constantly baiting you into these little, you know, bickering matches. Try to understand what is really going on with yourself first before you start, you know, trying to just waste your time arguing with people that don't need to be. You understand what I'm saying, right, Jeff? It's just
Yeah.
like fuck wasting your time arguing with these fucking people. Let them hit each other over the head. You know, like go find something better to do.
Yeah. There's plenty of shit you could work on yourself before you start trying to fucking convince other people about stuff. That's for sure. You know, it's get your own house in order, right?
Yeah, be prepared that you aren't going to have this internet thing to occupy your time with, and you're not going to have this endless debate to engage in. Be prepared that you might have to do something more individual, that you might have to take care of a human life, or that you might have to support your family, and you might have to, you know, like pay attention, but stop arguing all the time. Stop typing and and getting engaged in the notification cycle of like, oh, he replied. I gotta own him. I gotta fucking post another meme. That'll do it. No, that's not gonna do it. All it's gonna do is just waste more of your fucking time.
Yeah, for sure, man. 100%. Well,
Yeah,
man, listen, I appreciate you coming on again, dude. Every time we talk, I feel like we go down like 12 rabbit holes, which
yeah,
is awesome, right? I like talking to people that know more than one thing, right? We could just go off and just have a fucking conversation. If you ever want to come on again, dude, just shoot me a message, let me know. Like we'll make it
yeah.
happen.
Uh,
You know how it
I
is.
might, I
So
might, I might have to take you up on that. I might have to start becoming a regular guest or something because I got a lot of shit that I need to
yeah,
get off my chest. So
yeah, man, I'm all
I
about it.
appreciate that.
100%, man. I mean, you know, my show, as you know, dude, I just fire from the hip, man. I don't have
Yeah,
like a schedule really, you know. I don't really have like I'm not doing much here, man. I put the money into a nice camera and shit and like it looks cool, but
yeah.
pretty much just doing the thing for fun. So, yeah, anytime you want, just let me know. Do you want to shout out your stuff again real quick before we shut this thing down?
Yeah, of course. No, if anybody wants to keep track of what I'm up to and what I think about, you know, shit that's going on in the world, Mudflood memes on Instagram and Old Scary World on YouTube, and I'm on X and all the other ones too. But I would say, you know, check out the Instagram first. And yeah, no, I'm always trying to make new content and you know, communicate with my subscribers and stuff like that. So there's always something going on over there. And but I think the podcasting, I think, is what makes me feel the most, you know, useful to this whole community. So I have a few podcasts on Spotify. You can find my podcast on Spotify under Old Scary World, but I need to start making more, and I need to start coming on shows like this a little bit more often because there's a lot of shit that's happened since I took a break. So yeah, expect, you know, more podcasting in the future. But Jeff, you know, I understand you're on the East Coast, so I'm gonna let you go. And I just want to thank everybody for watching and just try to keep an open mind when it comes to this shit and don't fall for all their little tricks.
Hell yeah, man. Absolutely, for sure. And just so you know, I don't know if you saw the chat while we were talking or
No,
not.
I can't see it.
Oh, okay. Well, there was quite a few people in the chat, so shout out to all you guys in the chat. I noticed some of you guys were sharing this and like bringing new people into the chat, so shout out to all the new people. There was people here who knew you, so I guess your
Hmm.
sharing of this reached whoever. So there were some people
Yeah,
here that are fans of yours. So shout out to all you
yeah,
guys, man. We
yeah.
love you
Shout out to the
guys.
people who checked that out. That's cool. That's what I was
Hell yeah.
expecting and hoping everybody would see that.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Buy some fucking Bitcoin, everybody, because the dollar's collapsing. We'll see you guys later. Appreciate everybody.
Good night.